Friends, welcome to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. At first, there was a girl from Carver County High School who was both a cheerleader, a star athlete, and the most popular girl in school, Ashley Prentice. Ashley is the daughter of Merrill and Owen Prentice, one of the richest couples in the city. Merrill was the chairman of most of the well-known charities in the city, but not because she was involved in charity, but because of the status that it gave her. Owen owned more than 50% of the shares of the Normal Trust, the largest and most prestigious bank in the city, as well as all or part of several trading enterprises on Main Street. Ashley and Merrill were the most beautiful women in their age groups in Normal and Carver County, as well as in many nearby towns. Ashley's older brother by 2 years, Storm, this is his nickname, he hates his real name, Reginald, was different from other family members. He kept a low profile, played football like any other healthy male teenager at Carver High School, but did not seek fame, fortune, or image. He left the city for college and stayed there, eventually becoming a lawyer in the big city. Although Ashley's parents loved her, they never taught her humility, empathy, or mercy qualities that they themselves lacked. This led to the fact that Ashley was not too kind to many of her classmates, children who were not part of the popular group, one of which was Billy Thompson. Billy was a pretty harmless kid. He was not particularly good-looking, was short for a boy his age, and was not burly enough to play football in high school. For this reason, he was often bullied by boys from Carver's school. The main tormentor was the senior quarterback of the football team, Jack Austin. Billy endured the bullying without a murmur. Although Billy's parents were not poor, they did not have much free income, so he sometimes lacked material goods. However, to his utter dismay, Billy has a huge crush on Ashley. Billy and Ashley were in the same grade, in junior high at the time of the beginning of this story. Billy's infatuation was not unusual, as many boys of Ashley's age were in love with her, but he was not smart enough to hide it. As a result of Billy's infatuation with Ashley, he was mercilessly teased by classmates' guys who had not yet bullied him, despised by many classmates, and joked by many of those who did not tease or despise him. Despite his position, working part-time, he saved enough money to buy tickets to the prom and even rent a luxury car, and asked Ashley to go with him, so much in advance that no one else would have had time to do it, even the aforementioned football star Jack Austin. Ashley was shocked that someone with Billy's status had the audacity to ask her about it. Thank God he at least did it over the phone, since he would probably shit his pants in person. It gave her time to think, without showing the contemptuous look on her face that would have been obvious if he had asked in person. She decided that Billy should be put in his place, so after a significant pause, she began to question him in a flirtatious manner, and after some gloating said, "Yes, but I'm a little worried, Billy, that you won't have enough money to buy me a matching boutonniere, tiara, or other items that I'll need." Encouraged, Billy assured her that he could if he worked longer at his part-time job and asked her to confirm that she would go with him. "However, we must keep this a secret," she whispered over the phone. "Otherwise, my mother may interfere, seeking to achieve status. In addition, we should talk about this exclusively over the phone and not in person at school." Since Ashley's yes was beyond his wildest dreams, Billy was willing to agree to all the conditions. Thus began the most ruthless and prolonged prank in the history of Carver High School. Ashley talked her close friends into it on the terms of absolute secrecy and told Billy every week or so what she needed for graduation. The list included a tiara, the first of which she rejected because it was not shiny enough, a stole, a pair of ugly shoes that she did not intend to wear at all, but simply gave to the local branch of Goodwill, various bottles of perfume and jewelry. Billy spent all the money he earned, and which was in his bank account, as gifts from his grandparents. But he knew it was all worth it, especially since whenever he saw Ashley in the hallways of the school, she smiled at him, although she never talked to him in person. Ashley also told her arrogant mother about this evil prank. Instead of trying to dissuade her daughter, as good parents would do, Merrill just laughed and agreed to play her part in the prank. Finally, the big day came, and Billy drove up to the Prentice mansion in a rented Lincoln with the very boutonniere that Ashley said she wanted. However, when he got to the door, it wasn't Ashley who answered, but her mother, Merrill. "Hello, Mrs. Prentice," Billy stammered, not only because he was nervous about the upcoming evening, but also because Merrill, as already mentioned, was a very beautiful woman, and her low-cut evening dress barely concealed the splendor of her huge mammary glands. Is Ashley ready? Ready for what? That was Marilee's short and blunt reply. For graduation, he replied in a barely audible whisper. She left with Jack Austin half an hour ago. What makes you think she's going with you? Marilee chuckled. Billy suddenly realized that he had been made fun of like no one else in the history of Carver School, and he began to cry softly. Grow up and take this as one of your life lessons, Marilee continued tartly. But I guess you don't need this boutonniere anymore, and it will look great with my dress when Mr. Prentice and I go to the leukemia charity ball today, Marilee concluded, holding out her hand to hand. Completely broken and struggling to hold back tears, Billy handed over the boutonniere, and the door immediately slammed in his face, even without words of gratitude to Meryl. Billy drove his rented Lincoln to a remote location in the city and burst into tears. After a couple of hours of self-pity, he finally gathered his strength and drove home. His worried mother asked him what happened when she saw him come home early and upset, but he just said, "I don't want to talk about it," and went to his room. Sleep did not come for a long time, but eventually emotional exhaustion took over, and he fell into a deep, albeit disturbing sleep. The following Monday at school, everyone who heard about Billy's cruel prank was either laughing or shaking their heads. Fortunately, there were only 2 weeks left until the end of the school year, so Billy locked himself in his shell and spent them not talking to anyone, struggling to endure the laughter that came to him, especially from Jack Austin. He turned 18 that summer, and since there was no way he was going to put himself through a year of humiliation in his senior year, he dropped out of school and joined the Marines. It is usually necessary to have a high school diploma to join the armed forces, but the local Marine recruiter did not have time to get his quota and filled out the education section of the questionnaire for Billy, confirming that he had been presented with Billy's matriculation certificate. Before the end of the summer, Billy ended up in a military camp. About 6 years after Billy enlisted in the Army, Ashley returned to normal and was engaged to Jack Austin. There were too many beautiful women at Ashley's college to hurt her ego, so she returned to normal, where she was certainly outstanding and did not move to a big city, as the storm did. The past 6 years have been kind to Meryl and Owen. Owen is even richer than before. Thanks to classes at the fitness studio that Owen opened in Normal, a small number of cosmetic surgeries and weekly spa treatments, at 50 years old, Marilee looked better than ever. Then, in a low-crime Normal, a strange incident occurred. As Marilee was leaving Owen's office at the bank, as they were going to lunch, 2 thugs with guns and masks entered the Normal Trust and informed everyone that this was a robbery. One of the bandits pointed a gun at the cashier while she was filling a bag provided by the robber, and the other grabbed Meryl by the neck, hugged her tightly and said, "And you come with us, Milfa, we'll have fun with you." For about 10 seconds, Marilee was rightfully scared to death when she suddenly saw the hand of the bandit holding her jerk down, heard him scream in pain, since apparently his thumb was broken when the gun was torn from his hand, and soon after that she heard a deafening roar. It was a bullet that flew out of the pistol of the now disarmed bandit and hit the bandit at the cash register in the middle of the forehead. Soon after, without realizing how it happened, Marilee saw the thug who was holding her unconscious on the floor. When she came to, she heard a baritone male voice shouting towards the cashiers, "Call 911. She turned at the sound of the voice and saw a muscular man about 6 feet tall, with a pleasant short beard and mustache, and a shrewd look, holding the gun of the first bandit in his right hand, pointing at the floor. Marilee quickly realized that this was the guy who killed one robber and immobilized another, and most likely saved either her life or from bad actions. "Thank you very much," she whispered to the muscular man, and her eyes filled with tears. The muscular man did not react in any way, but simply took the cartridges out of the pistol, put it on the floor and went to the front door, apparently waiting for the police to arrive. The first patrol car appeared 3 minutes later, and soon others arrived, as well as 2 ambulances. A muscular man met the first police officers at the entrance, showed them some kind of identification, and when the detectives arrived, they sat down on chairs in the bank employee's spare room and talked with a muscular man. After about an hour, all this chaos finally subsided, although the bank was closed for the whole day, and the criminologists were still fussing around. The detectives left, taking with them a video from the bank's surveillance cameras, which apparently captured everything that was happening. One of the attackers was taken to the morgue, and the second to the hospital, handcuffed to a gun and under guard. Owen and Marilee were hugging each other most of the time. When everything calmed down, Owen asked the detective who was the last to leave. Who was the guy who thwarted the robbery and saved my wife? I didn't have a chance to thank him. His name is William Thompson, the detective replied. Where is he from? Marilee asked. I don't think I've ever seen him before. He said that he was born and raised here, recently discharged from the Marines, works at an electronics factory outside the city, and temporarily lives with his parents on Appleton Street. Marilee suddenly had a strange expression on her face. You mean Billy Thompson? He doesn't look the same as I remember. I know his name is William Thompson, but I don't know if his name was Billy. He didn't call himself that. But come to think of it, didn't someone pull a terrible prank on a boy named Billy Thompson at Carver's school 5 or 6 years ago? Owen and Marilee exchanged glances. I don't remember. Thanks a lot, detective. I'll get back to you, Owen replied. Of course, over the next few days, the only topic of conversation in the city and local social networks was the thwarted bank robbery. The local newspaper devoted the entire front page of the next day's issue to this event, despite the fact that neither the reporter nor the editor could contact William Thompson. All they had was what the detective had told Owen and Marilee. He had grown up to be normal, had just retired from the Marines and was now back in town, although his parents denied that he lived with them. In fact, William Thompson is the former Billy Thompson. Since leaving normal after graduating from high school, he has grown 7.5 centimeters and gained 11 kilograms of muscle, which was caused by a growth spurt, service in the Marine Corps, where he received a Silver Star, and commitment to physical fitness. Many have tried to contact him, but to no avail. No information could be found that he owns or rents a house or apartment in Carver County, where Normal is located, and the electronics factory where he works only admitted that he is their employee, but works in a guarded factory room where there is no public access, and the employer is ready to provide it to the public only if he agrees, and he didn't agree. Owen and Meryl, after consulting with Ashley, to whom they told everything, although by that time the video of the incident made by the bank had gone all over social networks, and was even shown on one of the TV channels available to residents of Normal from a city located just 60 miles away. Marilee, and to a lesser extent Ashley, began to have remorse. It was quite unusual for Meryl, almost unique in her life. However, the words the bandit said to her when he grabbed her by the throat with his hand haunted her and were reinforced by what the bandit confessed when he pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty due to the death of his colleague during the commission of a serious crime. She compulsively tried to thank William Thompson and apologize for what was done to him 6 years ago. With an insistence that was astounding, even considering her always persistent nature, 2 months later, Marilee was finally able to talk to William's parents and through them get a promise from him to meet her. She wanted to host a gala dinner for the entire Normal community, where the most significant civic achievements of the year would be celebrated, and William would obviously receive the highest award. On Saturday morning, Marilee drove to a remote part of Carver County, where William purchased a fully insulated and modern cottage in the name of LLC, of which he was the only participant, which made it impossible to find real estate in his name in the district. Marilee was dressed beautifully, but modestly. When she arrived, William was standing in front of the cottage, shirtless, chopping wood. Shirtless, his muscular torso looked even more imposing than in a jar. A slight shiver ran through her. When Marilee got out of the car, William stopped chopping and put on a tight t-shirt. Marilee didn't feel the usual confidence as she approached him. He did not greet her, did not smile, or show any other signs of warmth. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, William," she said hesitantly, forcing herself to smile. His only answer was, "Let's go inside." When he deftly entered his cottage and did not hold the door for her, she realized that the meeting could be unpleasant. Once inside, she was amazed at the home decoration and how bright it was, in no small part due to the skylight in the southern part of the roof. "Can I get you something to drink?" William asked without emotion. Considering that she was nervous, even though it wasn't noon yet, Marilee replied, "Do you happen to have any white wine?" "There's a Cloudy Bay Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand," he replied, shocking her to the core, as it was her favorite white wine, which is hard to find normally. "That would be great," she replied. She noticed that William had only taken a can of soda for himself. Marilee started a small conversation with William about when he came to town, what he did in the Marines, where he had been, etc. Nervous all this time, she continued to drink wine, as he refilled her glass every time when it turned out to be almost empty. Although William's answers were not particularly friendly and concise, they provided a significant amount of information, including that he actually participated in combat, but eventually became an electronic warfare specialist when his talent for electronics was accidentally discovered. After half an hour of chatter and 3 glasses of wine, Marilee got down to business. "William, I want to thank you for saving me at the bank. I don't know if you heard what that thug said to me when he grabbed me." "I heard," William said. "I have no doubt that he would have carried out his words," Marilee grimaced. "That's why I did what I did. I didn't give a damn about stealing money, but kidnapping is a completely different situation. I couldn't stay away even if it was you," he said. The word abduction hit Meryl hard. She thought about it many times after that incident, but when she heard someone else say it, she was shocked to the core. So much so that she gulped down her 4th glass of wine, and the words, "even if it was you," hurt even more. "Did you recognize me?" "What is it?" she asked. "Of course, it's hard to forget you, Mrs. Prentice, not only because you look so good, but also because you were the rudest person in my life, apart from your bitch daughter Ashley and her boyfriend Jack, so your image is kind of imprinted in my memory. Well, everything is open, and now you should not try to avoid this topic." Marilee stared into William's eyes as she considered her answer. They were the most intense and mesmerizing she'd ever seen in her life. His physical transformation from a 17-year-old harmless kid who showed up at her door 6 years ago, given his service in the Marines and growing up, was understandable. But why hadn't she noticed those eyes before? Maybe because there were tears in them then, and maybe they've changed too. I really don't know what to say," she stammered, holding his gaze. "I don't think Ashley and I could have been any more cruel to you. I've always regretted it." "But when did you regret it?" "After I saved your ass. Of course, not before, because I never received an apology from you." Marilee realized that he was probably right. She hardly thought about that evening until the moment when he saved her. Marilee mumbled a few more apologies, receiving mostly brief answers or just stares from William in return. After she drained her 5th glass, having now drunk the entire bottle, she asked, "Is there any way I can make it up to you?" "Yes, but you won't agree to that," he replied harshly. "Try me," she replied, vowing to hold his gaze. William stood up, took off his shirt, pulled down his pants, showing a very red and proud phallus, and challenged, "Get undressed." Marilee's mind seemed unable to comprehend the situation. She didn't know exactly why. She knew that the bottle of wine she had drunk, William's creepy gaze, and the imposing phallus greeting her contributed to this, but decided that it was most likely due to the guilt she had felt since the day she was rescued. She had treated him like a bad person, and he had saved her, and possibly her life, and still almost completely refused her gratitude. She could have sat like this for a long time if it hadn't been for the fact that, after getting out of his pants and taking off his Crocs, he came up to her and held out his hand. When she accepted it, he gently yanked her off the chair, picked her up in his arms, and carried her to his bedroom, which was only 6 meters away. William put Marilee next to his bed and slowly began to take off her clothes. She felt dizzy when first a blouse, then a bra, then a skirt fell on the bedroom floor. The usually confident and talkative woman was not like that at all now. After a few kisses and licks, William stood up, picked up Meryl as if she weighed nothing, and gently laid her on her back on the bed. He immediately went from tenderness to aggression. It was only a few minutes before Meryl started squirming and screaming. When she finally came to her full senses, the only thing she could say was, "Didn't your mother feed you long enough?" "No, and she also wouldn't let me use her, but you'll let me, won't you, Marilee?" he snapped. Marilee had never made love before. This was partly due to her attitude towards love, which it's hard to believe, given what had happened in the previous 40 minutes, was more sanctimonious than adventurous. Other factors were Owen's apparent lack of interest in this particular pastime, and the fact that men had been preoccupied with her breasts all her adult life, which repelled rather than aroused her. For reasons she didn't understand, Marilee was both afraid to refuse William and curious about how she would feel. William growled, "Bring them together," and she obeyed immediately. After the tingling sensation in her entire body subsided a little, William kissed her on the lips for the first time, imperiously, completely controlling the situation, depriving her of the strength to resist, and dug into her liquid-covered chest. Marilee was sure that the passion of his kiss would trigger the smoke detectors, but fortunately this did not happen. Breaking the kiss, William slipped out of bed, picked her up again, and carried her to his surprisingly large and sophisticated shower stall. When the water turned on, it was cold, but it helped her to fully recover. And when it warmed up, she just sighed and began to enjoy how William thoroughly washed her entire body with liquid soap and a washcloth. After they dried off and dressed again, Meryl felt awkward. However, for the first time, William seemed interested in making her calm down when he asked, "I'm glad you came to see me, Mrs. Prentice, but I'm not sure you told me the real reason you came. After the last hour and a half, you can definitely call me Merrily," Merrily said carefully. "I hope you won't mind if I call you Mrs. Prentice. It makes me feel indecent," he replied, smiling for the first time. Merrily pulled herself together and sighed. "In addition to apologies, I wanted to ask you to attend the award ceremony of everyone in Normal and accept the civilian award that you received for stopping a bank robbery and saving me." William shrugged his shoulders and said, "I don't really like awards. You can hold the ceremony without me. I know it might be awkward for you, but I promise that you will feel as welcome as possible, and many in the community really want to thank you. Please come." William's gaze became serious. "I don't think you're willing to pay for me to come." "Name a price. I'm sure we can figure something out." "Well, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever made love to, and besides, you're very decent in bed, so I think I can be persuaded to come to the award ceremony if you pay me a couple more visits." Merrily didn't know that William was pulling her strings by saying decent in bed. Everything was much more than decent. However, William learned a lot about life in the Marines, and one of them was the ability to manipulate women with a high opinion of themselves. Merrily took the bait. "What does worthy mean?" she replied indignantly. "Because you look so good that you don't put the effort into love that really good girls do. Because you don't need it. This suits me because your appearance really excites me, so I don't need the passion that a less attractive woman could provide. Insulting me is unlikely to make me come here again so that you can have fun. It was a big mistake from the very beginning. I can't believe I let you do what you want with me," she growled, feeling anger boil inside her. William pulled her to him so that their noses were only a few centimeters apart. He looked down at her and said, "You can either come again and use me to take out the brains or 2 more times, making the same effort as today. Choose, otherwise I will not go." Merrily wasn't used to not being in control of the situation, and now she was furious. "You're incredibly arrogant. Then don't come to the award ceremony. I'm sure we can find someone more worthy," she snapped, turning to leave. Her flight was interrupted when William gently but forcefully grabbed her hand, pulled her to him, and planted a long kiss on her lips. She burst into her Mercedes, cast a dagger glance at William, who was sitting on the porch with a satisfied expression on his face, and drove out. When Merrily was driving home, her mind was even more messed up than when she was driving to William's. She was more ashamed than ever in her life, but when, despite the fact that she took a shower, some seminal fluid seeped into her panties, and then onto her thigh, the thought flashed through her brain. How much seminal fluid did this bastard pump into me? And she shuddered. For the next few days, Meryl's thoughts and emotions were like a roller coaster. Both Owen and Ashley asked her what was going on. She gave an unconvincing excuse that they did not believe, but based on past actions, she did not want to insist on her own. Sometimes Meryl was confused, sometimes angry, sometimes disheartened, and then determined. However, she felt the worst when she experienced or almost experienced a spontaneous moment thinking about her affair with William. The little thing was that she got William's mobile phone number from him, but only on condition that she didn't share it with anyone. After 3 days of poor sleep and anxiety, during which she canceled several meetings with charities she worked with, she called him. "William Thompson speaking. William, this is Merrily Prentice." "It's good to hear from you, Mrs. Prentice. I was wondering if I could come to your cottage to talk a little more and convince you to accept the award." "How about Saturday at 8 in the morning?" William asked. Merrily was glad that there was no hint of arrogance or swagger in his tone. "Yes, that would be great. I'll see you then," she swallowed hard. When Merrily drove up to William's cabin at 7:51, he opened the door for her without waiting for a knock. The only item of clothing he was wearing were sweatpants. "Hi, William," was all she managed to say before he took her in his arms and kissed her hard. Soon after that, she couldn't remember exactly how it happened. She found herself on William's bed. Remembering William's last words about worthy of love, She intended to show William that she was much more than just a pretty face and a beautiful body. Having completely absorbed him, she became even more energetic than ever in her history, and rode him like a rented mule, and his arms wrapped around her, giving pleasure to both of them. When, after a wild leap, Meryl's genitals warned of the approaching climax, William apparently felt it too. He pulled her down so that he sharply jerked her pelvis up. She let out a primal scream, and he let out a baritone wheeze as they were both overtaken by a grueling, synchronized moment. Once on top, William slowly exited her sprawled body, covered with a thin film of sweat. "Mrs. Prentice," he grinned devilishly, "of course you don't need anyone to boost your already high self-esteem, but I can't help myself. This love was just great. I just can't imagine how he could have been better. You are just a gorgeous piece of ass." For some reason, this caused a rush of emotions in Meryl. Merrily, as she was just a few months ago, would have considered this comment rude and William a bore. However, the current Merrily was filled with pride and even shed a few tears, and a smile played on her face and in her heart. "Since you're my best ass now, I'm not done with you yet," William chuckled, turning her over on her stomach and slightly spreading her legs. She had never made love in such a position before. She did not even know that such a thing was possible, and that it was called the concubine pose, which might have confused her since she did not consider herself a concubine. But undoubtedly she liked it. Sometime later, the clock showed 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She was woken up by a naked William. "It's time to get up, Sonia. Your phone has already rung a dozen times. People need you." He grinned. Merrily was like a zombie when William helped her into the shower and washed her all over, especially her crotch and breasts. By the time they finished, she was almost back to normal. After they were dressed, William took her in his arms. "Since you have arranged the best love in my life, I will come to the award ceremony. When, where, and at what time?" Merrily smiled. "I will contact you to clarify the details, certainly within the next month." After a long goodbye kiss, Meryl walked unsteadily to her Mercedes and drove away. It took all her attention to avoid an accident. For some reason, Merrily found it necessary to visit William every Saturday for the next month to discuss some aspects of the award ceremony. Ironically, although the discussion usually took only a couple of minutes, her stay at William's cottage dragged on for a couple of hours. During the discussion, William explicitly told Merrily that if Ashley was at the ceremony, then in no case should she approach William or try to talk to him. Merrily agreed. Finally, the momentous evening arrived. Despite William's assurances that he would definitely come, Merrily was still nervous that he might not be there to take revenge on her for the evil trick she had helped arrange for Ashley 6 years ago. She hoped that their loving relationship, which William enjoyed as much as she did, would eliminate the awkwardness of his non-appearance. When it was almost time for the presentation, and William was still not there, Merrily was very worried, especially since she could not reach William on her mobile, and breathed a sigh of relief when, 10 minutes before the start of the presentation, he walked through the door with his parents, leisurely walked to the main table, sat down, and even shook hands with Owen when he had the first opportunity to thank him personally after the incident at the bank. William was humble and gracious, accepting Mayor Normal's highest award of the evening, saying that he did the right thing and did only what he had to do. While Meryl and Owen enjoyed the rest of the evening while people chatted in the open bar after all the presentations, Ashley and Jack were not at ease. People seemed to try to avoid them, not forgetting the rumors about how badly they had treated William. Their sense of discomfort was further enhanced by the fact that Merrily had made it clear to Ashley that she should not approach or try to talk to William. Even remotely unaware that Merrily was visiting William's bed, Ashley was outraged that he had forgiven Merrily, but not her. The situation became even more awkward when Jack, already half drunk, approached William and, holding out his hand, said, "Listen, dude, let's forget the past." William looked at him with a growl, glanced contemptuously at his hand, and walked away. This led to Jack getting drunk as shit. Ashley didn't want Jack to drive them home, and she didn't want to drive herself, given the amount of alcohol she'd had. "Let's call a taxi or ask Mom and Dad to take us home," she begged. Although she and Jack were not married yet, they were engaged and lived together. "No, damn it," he replied angrily. "I'm able to drive." Against her better judgment, in order to keep the peace, she got into Jack's Tesla. William left the ceremony to take his proud parents home shortly before Jack and Ashley left. He was driving at top speed and was upset when a Tesla sped past, passing where there was a double yellow line and seemingly lost control. "This guy is a walking accident just waiting to happen," his mother complained. They had driven no more than half a mile when they turned a sharp bend and saw that the Tesla had crashed into a tree. A car traveling in the opposite direction stopped, and its driver got out to look at the accident. William got out of the car and went to see if he could help. The driver of the other car shouted, "Be careful, electric cars can catch fire." William looked into the car and saw that the airbags had gone off. People were most likely still alive but unconscious, and he could already hear the guffaws. He managed to open the driver's side door and unfasten his seatbelt. He pulled the driver out and carried him a good 15 meters away. Then he returned for the female passenger. The passenger side door was not working, and the passenger's seatbelt was jammed. William returned to his car, took out a knife, cut the seatbelt, and pulled the woman out just as the car began to engulf the flames. Both he and the woman suffered minor burns, but nothing serious, but a few more seconds and the situation would have been deplorable. The ambulance and the police arrived. According to state law, in the event of an accident with serious property damage and injuries, the police have the right to take blood for analysis without the consent of a person. Of course, Jack and Ashley were in the Tesla, still unconscious when they were taken away by ambulance. At that moment, due to the darkness and other circumstances, William did not know that the people he saved were Jack and Ashley, although he suspected it. Police interviewed William, his parents, and the second driver, whose wife filmed the scene on her iPhone. William was treated by a paramedic at the scene, but since the burns were only first degree and covered a small part of his body, he refused to be transported to the hospital. On Monday, 2 days later, the car crash made the front page of the local newspaper. On Monday, the video was shared on social media. The front page article was accompanied by a photograph, apparently taken from a video, in which William carries Ashley to safety while a car is on fire in the background. The fact that William had received the city's highest award for bravery just a few hours earlier, and now repeated another act of heroism, was regarded as one of the most amazing circumstances in the history of normal. On Monday evening, on the phone, Marilee sincerely and cordially thanked William for saving her little girl. "I didn't know it was Ashley and Jack at the time," he said. "But you would have saved them anyway, wouldn't you?" Marilee asked. "Yes, of course I did," William replied, slightly offended that Marilee had even asked about it. There is a big difference between an evil prank and letting people die. They discussed how Ashley was feeling in the hospital. Her and Jack's injuries were not life-threatening, and they would be discharged in a day or two, and how the award ceremony went. Then Marilee asked, "Is it okay if I come to your place on Saturday morning?" William didn't have to think about it for long. Despite the fact that he couldn't wait to start dating again, now that he was settled into a normal life, having one of the two most beautiful women in the area, even if she was 50 years old, relieved the excitement. It was very pleasant. "Is it okay at 8 in the morning?" he asked. "See you then," Marilee replied. When Ashley and Jack were discharged from the hospital, their relationship changed, partly due to the fact that Jack ignored Ashley's request not to drive, and now he faces punishment for drunk driving. And after a year ago, he was already convicted of drunk driving. It became really serious business. When Ashley read the newspaper article about who saved her and saw the video on social media, she was not just embarrassed, but depressed and ashamed. Like Marilee, she was her daughter after all. She felt remorse for the way she had treated William in the past, and felt an urgent need for him to accept her gratitude for saving her and forgive her for past misdeeds. However, as in the case of Marilee, he refused to answer her calls, although she got his phone number from his mother. 3 weeks after being discharged from the hospital, Ashley returned home, and she and Jack took a break. Jack hoped it wouldn't be forever, but Ashley was already starting to think it might be forever. Although the initial embarrassment of being saved by William and his obvious contempt, which did not allow her to even thank him, dissipated a little, she realized that until she apologized and thanked William, there would always be an emptiness in her heart. She needed absolution. Although Marilee was extremely and unnecessarily vague about how she managed to persuade William to forgive her and come to the award ceremony, Ashley was able to conclude that despite his distant attitude, she visited William at his house and, in fact, begged for forgiveness. She suspected that there might have been an exchange of money and decided that she could at least offer to pay for all the things he bought for her in high school as part of her evil joke. Since there were no documents confirming William's place of residence, his parents refused to tell him. The employer considered the information confidential, given William's position in the company, and merrily stubbornly claimed that she knew nothing. Ashley hired a private investigator using money from a trust fund that her grandparents had established for her, and to which she recently gained access to. Since the private investigator was able to bribe someone, records from the traffic police, and was able to install a tracker on William's car when it was parked at his parents' house, 10 days later he had an answer. The following Friday afternoon, Ashley waited in an inconspicuous rental car at a gas station near the intersection where William needed to turn off to get to his house from the factory where he worked. A little after 7 in the evening, she saw his car turn off. She waited 10 minutes and then drove to his house. With great trepidation, she climbed the steps and knocked on the door. When William opened, he was wearing a t-shirt and shorts. This outfit completely showed off his muscular body. She had never noticed before, and his appearance had definitely changed in the last 6 years, that his eyes were more penetrating than any others she had ever seen. "I know you don't want to talk to me, William, but I beg you to let me in and talk to me. I swear that after I've spoken, I'll leave you alone. How did you find me?" "I've hired a private investigator. I'll also take the tracker off your car before I leave, I promise." "Does your mom know you're here?" "No. She would never tell me where you live or even tell me if she ever visited you here, and I assume she did, since you seem to have forgiven her for the role she played in that evil prank I played on you 6 years ago. Please, William." William's curiosity was aroused, as was his one-eyed friend's, because despite the fact that Ashley was most likely still angry, she and her mother were still the most beautiful woman in a 50-mile radius. Without saying a word, William opened the door and stepped aside so she could enter. As soon as she crossed the threshold, he asked, "Do you want something to drink? If it's not too much trouble and you have a glass of wine, it would be nice." When William poured a glass from a bottle that looked like it was her mother's favorite New Zealand white wine, Ashley found the coincidence surprising but said nothing. William got himself a can of soda. After taking a sip, she drained her glass to gather her courage. William immediately refilled it. She began, "First of all, the present one. I want to sincerely thank you for saving my life. Jack was stupid to drive drunk, and I was just as stupid to let him do it. I broke up with him, and I'm unlikely to resume the relationship." "I don't care," William replied, which made her throat tighten. I don't think so," Ashley stammered, losing all the bit of self-confidence she had when she walked in. "Anyway, it's absolutely true. You saved my life, and I am very grateful to you." When she didn't get any reaction from William, Ashley swallowed and continued. "In high school, I was a narcissistic fool. You were a terrible person, but the most terrible thing I've ever done was the evil prank that I pulled on you. It was mean, disgusting, terrible, and all the other negative words that can be used to describe it. I want to make it up to you. First of all, I want to reimburse you, with interest for 6 years, all the money that you spent on me. Please let me do this. Why? Because it will at least improve your financial situation and it will help me feel better." "Is this about you again, Ashley?" No, William," she replied, draining her glass again, and tears began to flow down her cheek. "I swear, I want you to forgive me. It will help you as much as it will help me." "Why do you think I'm capable of forgiving?" "Because you've turned into a strong, handsome, confident man, and because you've forgiven my mother. Do you think that since I've forgiven her, I should forgive you too?" "Yes, I will do everything necessary for this forgiveness." "Really?" William asked, standing up and looking into Ashley's eyes like a cobra at a squirrel. Ashley felt a chill run through her body, the like of which she had never experienced before. Yes, yes, she stammered. William took off his shirt, pulled it down and got out of his shorts, then took Ashley's hand and pulled her off the chair. Ashley was mesmerized by William's body. She didn't resist either when he pulled her to him and kissed her, or when he picked her up in his arms and carried her into the bedroom. 2 hours and a few more moments later, Ashley fell asleep in William's arms, emotionally and physically exhausted, and most likely did not move all night. Before falling asleep, William wondered what the reaction would be when Merrily came here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. With a smile on Ashley's face and his fingers, he fell asleep.